Hey everyone. Hey Mads.
Hello, Leslie.
Sweet. Well, happy Tuesday, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Visual Studio Toolbox Live. Specifically, we're going to be talking about some new features available for 17.1. So exciting.
Yes, it is. I've been using the previews since the first preview came out internally, and I'm super excited. I think it's a really, really strong release. So
Yeah,
super excited to see this now finally go out in the public release.
it's so exciting. This is our first major release in a post VS 2022 era. I wish it were 17.2 just so we could keep with the 2 trend that's going on today.
Right.
But yeah, that's okay because 17.1 is really cool too. So we've got a couple features that we're going to talk about today on behalf of many awesome members from the Visual Studio team. And feel free to put all your comments in the chat below, any questions that you have, any features that maybe we didn't talk about in this episode. So we want to hear about it. And Mads, where can we go to get started with 17.1 and just start playing as we talk?
Well, you can always open the installer if you already have Visual Studio installed. Simply pop that open, or go up to the help menu in Visual Studio and check for updates. Click that button, and that will start the installer and get you the latest bits. If you don't have Visual Studio installed, go to visualstudio.com and follow the download links from there. And any fresh install of Visual Studio 2022 today on the website will include the latest bits. So it's not something you have to do separate installs. You're always on the latest and greatest if you go and download from the website.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So on top of that, if you go to the devblogs.microsoft.com/Visual Studio, and I can post the link later, there are tons of blogs available all about the new features in 17.1, including some that we're going to talk about today.
Yep.
And somebody already asked, did we lock you in the garage?
I have been in and out all morning, so no, I'm not logged in, but I do spend a lot of time here.
Yep. It's been fun to see the evolution of your garage. It's graduated from garage to like a fancy doctor's office. That's the vibe I get.
It used to be really cold in here until we insulated the thing. So.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
and now it's winter, and I'm happy that it's no longer that cold.
Yep. But you know what isn't a nightmare? Improved performance across the board in Visual Studio 2022, and search is no exception. So we're going to kick things off today by talking about find in files, which you're probably already familiar with, but you're probably not familiar with the fact that we've improved it to be a lot speedier. So joining us is Denizen, who's going to talk to us about find in files.
Hello.
How's it going?
Not bad. How are you guys?
It is going great. So I am excited to learn about what find in files is, why we decided to put so much work into the performance aspect of it.
Absolutely. So obviously every developer searches. You can't really go about your day without searching for something in your code base. And within Visual Studio, we know everyone loves finding files, right? You type your string and you get everything that you get. And obviously when you have a tool being used so much, you want to make it as efficient as possible. You don't want to kind of infringe on any developer's day, slow it down in any way. And so we've been working on performance and finding files for a while now. And in 17.1, we have one of our biggest updates coming in with the index finding files. So I'm really excited to talk a little bit about what index finding files is, why it matters, and the actual improvements that we're seeing with the new technology.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, I can't wait to learn more. So do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, I will go ahead and do that. So like we're saying, we've been working on improving the search experience in Visual Studio, specifically for finding files for a while now. You can see here that we started in Visual Studio 16.4, and we've been improving the efficiency with every version. Specifically with 17.0, we were able to have about our finding files performance. But now with 17.1, you can see that our search experience basically feels instant for a lot of users, right? And that's kind of what we want. We don't want our developers to be waiting at all for search. We want it to feel instant. So the second you get into your find and files experience and you press that enter button, you want to get all your results instantly, right? So right now we're averaging around 1.2 seconds for 95% of all searches executed across Visual Studio, which is a staggering number to see with find and files. So specifically with indexing, right, we want to talk about what is indexing and how does it work, right? So when you're opening up a solution or a folder, Visual Studio will launch a satellite process that you can see in your task manager called the indexing service. And this transmits a list of files to the index. And without getting too much into the nitty gritty of what's happening, the indexer will scrape through like all the files and create an index of n-grams, which will allow us to basically lower the number of files that we need to search, which ultimately brings us that really efficient search experience that we want to see with find and files. So we lower the number of files, which ultimately then will output the number of results in a much quicker way. So I have two really quick demos about what this can look like. Obviously, here at Microsoft, we work on quite large repositories, and we've seen direct impact with index find and files in these repos. So to quickly go through the first one, the Orchard core repo is around 1,500 projects with 50,000 files. So in 17.0, even with the great performance improvements that we had there, you got like results in 10 seconds for a classic search. But on the right is where we have the index find and files, where you can see that it feels much more instant, right? Less than a second to get the results for a search query with a repository with 50,000 files. Now, to kind of up this a little more, the Chromium repo has over 300,000 files, all in C++. And executing a search in 17.0, find and file search in the Chromium repo can take up to 30 seconds, right? Now, on the right, we have index find and files. Again, not much happening there because it's already done. So you can see that within 1.5 seconds, you get all the matches within the Chromium repo.
That is so impressive. That is a massive improvement. Like,
Yeah, that's fantastic.
no words.
Hey, I got a question, or it's not me, but someone from that's watching here is asking if these indexes that you're doing, if they are persisted over the, if you close Visual Studio and then you open it again tomorrow, does it have to re-index everything, or is that sort of shared?
That's a great question, actually. So the indexing process is actually shared across your memory and your hard drive. So the index is actually stored within your hard drive memory. And so you'll see a new folder that's generated that stores the index that you have. So every time that Visual Studio is relaunched, it'll only add the new stuff that might be added and only add the new stuff. So it's not going to go through the entire repository every single time and kind of drag down anything. It's just for the new stuff. So we're storing everything within your hard drive, actually.
Do you know, like if you do like a branch switch, if you have a Git repo and you switch branches, like is that also then just the delta that's changing in the index, or is it a brand new index every time, or how does that work?
That's a good question. As far as I know, a branch is technically completely brand new, so we would go through the index again today. So the branch switching would require a different index.
But then it's always using that index every time you switch back and forth between.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a one-time thing. When you switch back, you'll be able to continue to use the index and get the faster experience right in Visual Studio.
Awesome. And I guess part of that question was also if this is related to Windows search in any way.
I am not aware of it being related. I'm assuming we're talking about the Windows keyboard search.
It might be the indexing service or something like that. I guess the Visual Studio, the one you're showing, you have a separate indexing service than what Windows
this is something this is built brand new by the Visual Studio team. So it isn't something that already existed. That's correct.
All right.
Yeah, that is very exciting. As somebody who's experienced slow performance with find and files on my own projects, it's really nice to be able to see that dramatic improvement. That's 29 seconds faster than what it used to be. That's really cool.
Absolutely. So I have a quick, just for those who are interested in trying it out, turning it on, it might be enabled for some of you guys on the preview version by default. But if you want to try it out, you just have to go to Tools, Options, Environment, and then Preview Features. You'll see an Enable Index for faster find experience right in dialogue there. So go ahead and make sure that you have that checked. And then from then on, again, like we said, on solution load, you'll see a background task in the bottom left corner of Visual Studio that will let you know that index is going on, and you'll be able to track like when the index is complete and when you're actually using the upgraded index find and files performance.
Great.
Yeah.
That's really good stuff. So, I mean, what's next for find and files, or just the world of search and Visual Studio in general?
Absolutely. So we are definitely putting a lot of investment into different areas of search. So first of all, find and replace is another area that we're looking into right now to improve the performance. So it's not just about finding stuff. We also, as developers, want to perform actions on whatever we find. So find and replace is one of the areas that we want to continue to improve the performance that we're working on. And more excitingly, we're actually working on a brand new search experience as well at the same time, where we can maybe bring in a completely new experience for other scenarios that we're actually working on right now. But hopefully in the near future, we'll start seeing a newer search experience as well.
So excited. Stay tuned for that, y'all. So, I mean, all of this kind of seems too good to be true. So what's the drawback? Does it need more storage or RAM or anything like that to use index find and files?
Yeah, so the index obviously will take up some storage, right? So if you're working on a computer with barely any hardware storage left, we will notify you about the issue there, and that's going to be the only issue. And the other drawback is the duration at the beginning of solution load that it takes to execute the index. So there is some time loss there, but in the long run, that it kind of pays off with how fast that it's going to be. So you lose some time in the beginning for the index to complete, but then you get the power of the index going forward.
Do you
but
know,
honestly, that's the main drawback to the index. It's really, really great. I would really recommend at least trying it out and seeing how it works.
do we know like how long it takes to run that index when you open the solution for the first time for like an average solution size? I don't know what an average solution is. Is that 10 projects, 20 projects, or something like that?
Yeah, that's actually a great question, and I'm trying to collect that data. We're actually trying to put that together right now. It's very, very dependent on solution to solution, so I don't have a great number right now for that, but hopefully in the coming times we'll be able to estimate like what the time is, and then users will be notified a lot easier.
I guess it's dependent on the number of files and not necessarily how many projects. And
yeah, like we said, since it's going through that engram, basically we're pattern matching with the index find and files, right? We're going through all your files and trying to find specific patterns and storing patterns together, which ultimately lowers if we have to go through every file, or can we just go through the patterns, and that makes it easier. But in order to get those patterns, we have to go through every file, get through every character string, and find those patterns that we want.
Very cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, that is so exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing how the search capabilities continue to evolve as we continue iterating on VS 2022.
Absolutely. I'm excited to be back for more search related stuff in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Hope to see you back.
Awesome.
All right. So that was pretty sweet. I love searching for things, especially searching for things that I know is going to take a quick amount of time. Waiting around for a search can be somewhat counterproductive in a way. So up next, we talked a little bit about the Visual Studio installer that you should use to update to 17.1 if you haven't already. And you might have noticed, if you're doing that right now, that there's this new little feature called bulletins that's hanging out in the installer. And that's what we're going to talk about next. So joining me now are Misty, Michael, and Kelly from the Visual Studio setup team. Welcome, y'all.
Hey.
Hello.
Yeah, so how are y'all? Y'all good? Is everybody good?
I'm doing great.
Good.
It's Tuesday.
Yeah.
I feel like I want to do everything in twos right now, but I was not prepared. Gosh,
That's okay.
So can you tell us a little bit about what are bulletins? I've never heard of this other than like the thing that I stick on my wall with all my Post-its of things that I need to do later. So how does this apply to Visual Studio, and why does it exist today?
Yeah, so our code name is bulletins. So that's our internal code name. And so basically we built a new tips feature in the installer. So like when you install or update Visual Studio, you'll see a tip above the progress bar while you wait. And that's all a bulletin is, right? It's just a tip. The reason why we built this feature is because we've gotten consistent feedback from developers of all experience levels that they want to learn how to do specific things in Visual Studio, or that they didn't know about a feature. So we wanted the bulletins feature to be like, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this scenario, but say you're working with your teammates and you have a teammate that says, hey, can you come here for a second? I want to show you something really cool. Well, that's the vibe that we want from bulletins. We want it to be the tips to be like developers telling other developers cool tips. And that whole like, hey, I know this cool thing, I want to show it to you. It's like the cool thing that your teammates do. And so that's the vibe that we want to go for. So we conducted experimentation, we did A and B testing, and we did loads of user testing. And because, we did this for several months because we wanted to really get a clear picture on, the types of tips that work and the types that don't. And we also wanted to make sure that we thought about accessibility too. So we did talk to one dev in user testing that said that he would never use bulletins. So I was like, awesome. Like, tell me about it. Like, what do you hate
We
about
love
it?
it when they say, when customers say, we'll never use this ever. I'm like, why?
Yeah, because like, that's valuable feedback that we should take into consideration. Because, most of the time that's where we get the gold bars, as I call it. Like they'll come up with an idea that's 50 million times better than what you thought of. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And so this user was like, I would never use this thing. He's like, but I do appreciate the fact that it's not obtrusive, and it's not distracting. And, I'll just ignore it. I'll just close it. But, I don't hate it, and maybe in the future, if there's something that I want to look at in a bulletin, I might, maximize it again. But, like that's that he appreciated the fact that we thought about that and it didn't feel so obtrusive. But that's okay if you don't like it. We do want to encourage people to upvote or downvote like their feedback because we are listening to that. So if you think something is not relevant to you, let us know, because we want to make sure that it's got the vibe like, oh, this is the cool stuff, because I mean, like, think about like, hey, can you think of a time when like you had an experience in your life where you got a really good tip? I mean, I can think of my first tip experience, and it was when I watched a movie in the 80s. I forget the name of it. It's like The Wizard or something.
Oh, yeah.
But actually, I'm sorry, the 90s.
Yep.
And so in that movie, they talk about there's a scene where you can get the whistle in Super Mario Brothers 3. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know there was a whistle in the game. And so like that's my first tip experience is like, oh my gosh, I can get the whistle and then just like breeze through this stuff and just have fun. Like this is great. There's all these other whistles. So anyway, that's what we want it to be, like a whistle. That,
I love that
that
analogy.
can help you like, learn more about Visual Studio and those sorts of things. So yeah, so I'm gonna hand it over to Michael because I also have Michael and Kelly here, which are devs who built the feature. And Michael's going to talk about how we wrote the code, and he's also going to talk about code design. So I'm going to let Michael take it over.
Awesome.
Well, and also we wanted to show what it looks like. So
Yep, that's important.
I just have a screenshot real quick. So when, as this rolls out, when you use the installer, this is what you're going to see. And as you're installing it, you're going to see these tips that are going to come up. And as Misty said, you can upvote or downvote them. We do keep track of that. So if you hate it, don't be afraid to just say downvote it, or submit feedback to us directly too. And also, if you don't want to see it, you can collapse it, and we will respect that you collapsed it, and we won't keep showing to you until you're ready to uncollapse it again. So, when we were building this, I think as developers, we often get a lot of cool ideas. And I will tell you, we had a lot of ideas on how we could make this very elaborate and put a lot of things into it. But one of the things we wanted to really focus on was, does this work for the developers who are using Visual Studio? Does it work for the people using the installer? And so we wanted to start simple and get feedback. And so that's what we did in the internal previews. And that ran inside of our, not both internal preview and external preview Visual Studio. So if you were on preview, you probably already have seen this running as an experiment there. And the feedback we got was pretty positive. So we said, hey, this is great. Let's move forward. And so like one of the things that I always come away with is just, you won't know until you actually have it into the hands of a real person who's going to use it, who's going to tell you whether it sucks or not. So, and so that's kind of where we went, is just getting that feedback. And we want to keep improving on it. We want to keep iterating on it based on feedback from all of you. So we're also, Kelly's going to talk about where you might see more of this in the future. But, this is something that I think as developers, sometimes we struggle with is, how do we build a minimal viable product that we can put out that is good enough, but not over-engineer it.
So, Michael, you said that you wanted feedback. So I see like the thumbs up and thumbs down, and Misty, you were talking about that too. So that is the feedback that we want people to actually click those two buttons, like either thumbs up or thumbs down if you like it, right? And that goes straight to you guys.
Yes.
Okay. Good to know. Personally, I'd thumbs up the keyboard shortcuts cheat sheet because I need that so bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that the new cheat sheet that you just created, Misty, recently?
Yeah. So one of the specific things that developers have said that they want is like different types of keyboard shortcuts, and there's a big learning curve with those. And so, I got together with Harshada, who works on the debugger in Visual Studio, and we created a bunch of new shortcut sheets. Yeah, cheat sheets. And then I created one based on customizations that the developers, like over the years when I've talked to developers that they use that are like outside of the product. So, different ideas like that. Like we've taken the feedback on, hey, we want this, we want to know how to do this. And we're also creating new resources to run as bulletins too. And so, that's, we've got lots of stuff coming.
The other thing I did want to mention, something I forgot, is that we also try to make this relevant to you and what you're doing. So we try to match it to what you're using in Visual Studio. And the other part of this, the back part that people don't see, is that we're developing content to put in here so that this is dynamic. This is not actually like just static, that you're going to see the same thing over and over and over again, that we're trying to make it relevant to you based on feedback that we receive from the people using it.
That's awesome. And I just like having this, here's while you wait for Visual Studio to download, here are some ways to start thinking about how you can use it in a way that fits you best, and learning up on things before you even enter the IDE. I think that's really exciting. Get your coffee while waiting for it to install, and then just check out some tips along the way.
Kelly, you want to talk about the future?
Oh, yeah. So I'm sort of telling you guys what's kind of new in 17.1. So Michael mentioned previously that this was sort of, we did A/B testing on it in the preview build of Visual Studio 2022. So if you guys participated in that, you'll see that it looks a lot different in 17.1 now. We added sort of the collapse bar and a carousel navigation. So that was one of the new things in 17.1. And we also learned what content was, I guess, engaging and positively received. That's sort of what we're trying to do, curate good content for our customers. So they sort of are always engaged in this and just go through it and don't collapse it. But yeah, but obviously they have the option to if they want. So we hope this feature sort of encourages feature discovery in Visual Studio. And because as we mentioned previously, there's just a lot to it. And sometimes it's like a black box where we don't know where to start, especially with newer developers in the field. And yeah, we wanted to share with them what makes these features, I guess, exciting and new. But yeah, I'm excited to see its impact and yeah, keep doing the upvote and the downvote.
Sweet. Well, you're already getting a positive impact because we have one comment saying the bulletins are awesome. It was cool to see some really awesome keyboard shortcuts that I didn't know about.
Oh, it's Jeremy. Hey, Jeremy.
One thing I also want to let people know that you may be wondering, well, once I turn the installer off, how do I see these things again? So I can't make any promises, but we are looking at seeing, based on feedback from you, how we can extend this into Visual Studio. So that's something we're working on. So I just wanted, again, this is our MVP so that we can, so we're not waiting until everything's, there. We're trying to get this feedback and learn.
That is great.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. There was one question here from Johnny asking if all these features are available in the community edition as well.
I think all of them are, right? Yours certainly is, right? Bulletins.
Yeah,
Bulletins,
there's no restriction on, as long as you have the installer, whatever version of Visual Studio that you have in there. If someone made based on what you have installed, their workloads, if someone made a bulletin for you, you'll see it.
What a cool name, Johnny Lizard. That's cool.
Right? That's so cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was really exciting. I'm actually excited to I haven't updated to 17.1 yet, so I'm looking forward to playing around with the bulletins again. Like, it's just nice to have an excuse to actually do something productive while installing.
I've had great experience with it. I feel like there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of things about Visual Studio that you probably don't know, right? Because Visual Studio is so big with so many features that these tips really help.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you guys so much. All right.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. So we talked about bulletins, and now it's time to go into the IDE itself. And we're going to go talk a little bit more specifically about some C++ updates. We're back on the perf train because everybody loves perf improvements. When I see perf improvements, I get excited because it's the little things for me that really
it's so important, right? It's like I always think of Visual Studio as my second home because it's probably the place I spent the most time in, outside my actual home is Visual Studio. So things like this really matter.
Absolutely. Yeah. So joining us up next is David Lee from the C++ team. Hey, David.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Leslie. Hi, Matt. It's great to be back.
Yeah, nice to have you back.
Yeah, we're on this perf train, right? Just over the past few months, we've been hearing a lot of great stuff from you, and it's our pleasure. And I'm very proud to just show off all the perf improvements that our C++ team has been working really hard to get you those productivity gains that you've been telling us that you needed. So why don't we get started?
All right.
Yeah, so one of the first things you see here is you can now get to code faster. Previously in our Visual Studio GA video, I mentioned we've done some work on warm IntelliSense loading. So, for example, if you're opening a project and you open up subsequent files, the perf around that has been gotten very, very fast. Today, I'm here to show you some more numbers about code IntelliSense loading. So this is the first time that you load a project and you load a solution. You're waiting for that blinking ready icon in the corner to finish. And yeah, as you can see on this graph, in Visual Studio 2019, the Unreal 4.27 sample project took around 13 seconds, while in 17.1, that time has decreased down all the way to 5.8 seconds.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow.
Shoot.
Every one of these little actions, there could be, some actions you do multiple times a day, like the warm IntelliSense loading. But this is one of the things, where you open up the IDE in the morning, you grab a coffee. Hey, we're trying to get you to code, and maybe you don't have to wait for your coffee to warm up.
But I want my coffee though.
Yeah.
But you said this is the Unreal Engine open source project? So
Yeah,
this is a huge project, is that right?
Wow.
Yeah, this is a huge project, and we measured the times on the sample project itself. Now, some of you out there might have seen a recent blog post from me that really detailed how, for Unreal Engine specifically, we had made very good IntelliSense performance. But for this, even though we measured on Unreal Engine, this is applicable to all C++ projects to some extent. Of course, there will be varying degrees of improvements to non-Unreal Engine projects depending on the code base structure and constructs. But for the numbers, we wanted to pick a big code base to show you the great work.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so time to IntelliSense actually affects multiple scenarios. For instance, whenever we need to refresh the IntelliSense engine due to changes in the header, that is one case. Or it also affects actions such as find all references.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, so here you can see another great improvement from the team. So prior in Visual Studio 2019, find all references in C++ would have taken you probably half a minute on a large project. Now we reduced it by making it 1.73 times faster when you're performing the same action in 17.1. So yeah, these are some of the great perf news that I have in store. And as always, we'll be keeping our ear open to hear your feedback.
So this is, am I right in guessing that this is because you have up the index that powers both find references and search is the same, or sorry, IntelliSense is the same index, and you've improved on that? Is that sort of the underlying change?
Yeah, that is one of the few underlying changes that is shared. So time to IntelliSense does affect finding references.
Nice.
That is really great. I feel like these improvements really couple well with the find and files improvements that we talked about earlier too. It's just
right. Did you see how fast Chromium?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So that is very exciting. It's the little things, like all that time it adds up when you spend so much time working on a particular project. So if we can shave it down in any way, shape, or form, that's always great in my opinion.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic.
Alrighty. Well, thanks, David. You mentioned a blog post that you wrote earlier. So is that where people should go to learn more? Is it on the guest blogs?
Yeah, there is a guest blog is aka.ms/18x faster about Unreal Engine specific improvements. But there will be a blog post out specifically regarding the 2 scenarios that I've showcased you today very soon.
That is exciting stuff. Can't wait. Sweet. And yeah, thanks again, David. I'm sure you'll be back yet again when we talk about some other cool updates that happen in the C++ world as we continue going on with 2022.
Right. Can't wait to be back and share more in the future.
Yeah, awesome. So see you later.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so we've talked about C++ improvements. We've talked about bulletins in the installer. And going back to bulletins for a sec, if you want to learn more about that, you can go to aka.ms/bs bulletins, which I'll pull up for a minute. And also, we talked about improvements in the find and file space. So there's lots of performance improvements going on with these new updates. They may not be the most flashy thing on paper, but really, they just make a world of a difference when it comes.
They really do. It's
yeah.
like quality of life improvement, right? It's something you can really feel every day. It makes Visual Studio feel more responsive. You know, I kind of sometimes think of these things as when you have a car that is fast and really reacts to when you hit the speeder pedal, right? It kind of reacts at the same time as you do, and it just feels better that way. More responsive, and these are exactly that type of improvement that you're going to feel.
I totally agree. But in addition to perf improvements, that is not all. So for the last segment, but certainly not least segment, we're going to be talking about what's new in the Git tooling space, because it turns out there is a lot. So joining me for that and joining Mads for that is Taser and James and Luke.
Hello, hello. Hi, Mads. Hello, Leslie. How are you guys doing?
Doing great.
We're doing well, my friend. How are you guys?
Doing well, doing well.
So I know that you've been very busy in the last couple of years doing a lot of improvement to the Git tooling and the GitHub integration and a bunch of things in that space. And I know what you have to show, and I'm very excited. So
yeah,
what can you
absolutely.
tell us, Pager?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have been actively working on enhancing the Git tooling in VS for some time. Our goal is to enhance the productivity of our users. We want to make it as easy as possible for folks to, use Git within Visual Studio without really needing to, switch their context. And so that's what we have been working on. And this time specifically, we have a lot of new features to share with our users that we are very excited about, both on the preview version of Visual Studio and also on the GA version of the product as well.
Good stuff.
Yeah, and this time, instead of me presenting what we are actually introducing into the product, like I have some of my engineering colleagues who actually worked on those features here with us today. We have Luke and we have James, and we thought that would be great for them to actually share the features that they worked on and developed themselves. So, Luke.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you, Taser. So today I wanted to go through a feature that I worked on called Compare Branches. Is my screen live now?
Yep.
Okay, cool. I'm only working on one small monitor here today. So yeah, one of the top feature requests that we had in the Visual Studio developer community was requesting the ability to compare branches and just show a diff in our UI between two branches. So one of the things that we added in the 17.1 release was just this ability. So I have this open source repo that I've been working on contributing to. So I've added a couple little commits here in this branch, and I want to see what it's going to look like when if I was going to be merging this into main. So what I would be able to do is, I already have this pulled up here, but if I click on any branch UI available within Visual Studio, whether it's up here or the relatively recent branch picker that we added down here, you can right click on any branch really, and then you will see this ability to compare with the current branch. So once we click on that, it'll open a new tool window, and we'll let Git changes collapse. There we go. And then we'll see this big UI here with the diff, and we'll see all of the different files that have changed between these two branches. And you can switch the branches to see which direction you want the comparison to be. So in this case, we actually probably want to see main on the left, and then compare the feature branch that I've been working on the right to see what stuff that we've added and what stuff that we have removed. So you may have noticed there was a brief distinction in the branches that I had clicked in order to actually show this diff. I had a branch that said main not diverged and main diverged. And basically what this means is that the example that I just showed was kind of the happy path scenario. Ideally, like if you want to compare to see what your pull request is going to look like, it might not necessarily look like that in practice, where these are exactly the files that I have touched and the things that are different. So this is kind of like, in some cases, this could be the ideal scenario for a branch compare. This is equivalent to almost what we would see of what you would expect in a Git 2.diff, which is showing the exact differences between 2 points in time. Or I'm sorry, this is equivalent to a 3.diff, which is what you would see like in a pull request. And which basically, I have a little graph that I wanted to show about that, where basically the pull request diff, you're seeing something kind of like this, where like this is main, for an example, and this is your topic branch. So you're only seeing the topic branch commits that you've had compared to something before main has diverged. So we don't actually support this scenario yet, but the fact that main didn't diverge at all, it's equivalent to looking at this pull request style diff. But if you actually go in and see that, if you want to do a branch comparison with main where it has diverged, and then you compare the current branches, you'll notice that there's you'll notice that there's 472 files that have changed, which may or may not be useful depending on what exactly context you're looking to do the branch comparison in. So in this case, for example, if I was going to, I was working on this feature called, basically it was a ability to simulate color blindness and like view your screen through the lens of that. And basically there might be some other, someone else could have been working on a very similar feature. So I might need to know if there's going to be merge conflicts or if someone else has contributed to this feature in main in the meantime. So if I diff with the either origin main or the diverge branch that I was showing, I can always search here and see what other things that I might not have added that could have been added. So for example, all of these, it looks like localized strings for different languages were added and updated in the meantime. So that might indicate to me that I might want to go and click, I might want to merge or rebase on one of these branches in order to say, I want to get the latest changes from this branch. So all sorts of different uses for being able to compare branches. And like I said, this is only a 2.diff versus we're only doing this kind of diff right now, where we're not smart enough to only calculate just the stuff that have changed. So you're not going to get that quite PR style diff. But in the future, and depending on how any comments we get in this thread or any comments that we get anywhere else, we definitely want to look at adding like richer support to actually mimic like what your diff is going to look like in like simulating a pull request review. So yeah, that is my feature. I guess we'll probably hand it over to James here.
All right, that is very exciting. I mean, yeah, that's capability that I only expect to see like in GitHub proper, another version control site, which requires having to swap to a browser, obviously. So yeah, that is really exciting to just see it in VS. I don't have to leave.
Yep, and then Luke mentioned something super important here. So we have just introduced this feature into 17.1 release, and we are listening for feedback. So please, as you are trying this feature, if you have any feedback, this is the right time to share it, and we'll absolutely look into it.
Yep. Go to
Yeah.
ZevCom, go to the
Yep.
Twitters, the tweets, whatever the kids call it.
Yep. And the other feature that we wanted to share with you today is line staging. That is another very popular feature that we have been working on for some time. It is still a preview feature, meaning that you'll have to get the preview version of Visual Studio to be able to see what we are about to show you. And we have James here with us today who have been working on this feature. So I'll hand it over to him so that he can walk us through what he has.
Thank you, Taysir. Yeah, so line staging has been requested for a long time. And before we get to line staging, there's some associated features that we need to talk about because they act as entry points to line staging. And we're really excited to share these too. So the first thing you might notice when launching Visual Studio is you'll see this new change margin on the left where we can see more contextual changes based upon what happened in Git. So before in Visual Studio, it would just show in-memory edits. If you closed and reopened Visual Studio, these edits would like disappear and you wouldn't have any information. Now it's if you have the Git source control plugin installed and you're in a Git repository, then you'll be seeing these contextual changes on the left, which is really exciting. So we have deleted, modified, and added code here. It also updates, of course, as you change things. And we have more contextual stuff, which you'll be familiar with, where it's like not saved yet. And this is also more accessible now. So that's really exciting. Additionally, this is using the same diffing algorithm that Visual Studio uses. So if we go ahead and like compare this with unmodified here, and we just show these side by side, which is not going to be, let's just do inline mode here. You'll be able to see pretty clearly that if we look over here, we're like leveraging the same diffing algorithm. So you'll always have consistent behavior between this file and the other file. And this is important because line staging leverages the difference to stage lines. So that's the first feature. The other thing we have, which is super exciting, is you can go ahead and click on this margin and see changes in line to the actual diff. And this is really good because you'll be able to contextually see things. So even though people might be using Git outside of Visual Studio or using external tools, this sort of inline feature is something only an IDE can provide. So we're really excited to provide this. And as you can see as I hover over here, there's entry points to stage changes here. So we can go ahead and I'm going to switch back to side-by-side view. So I like it a little bit better. And we can go ahead and stage this change here. And you can see that change gets staged. If we go ahead and compare with unmodified here, we can actually go ahead and we can actually go ahead and stage these changes, which is the actual line staging feature. And this is really good because when you're building a commit within Visual Studio, you really want to be able to like craft a specific message or story with your commits. So you want to pull in just part of the commit that like makes sense, which helps a lot with code reviews and creating clarity among your other team members. So obviously this code that I'm staging is nonsense, but yeah, you can go ahead and stage changes here. And then compare. Additionally, this works with VS Code. So if you line stage from VS Code and then you look at Visual Studio, we'll show that. And any other Git client that can basically respect the Git index and detect changes in that, it'll integrate with that. So we think that this is going to be really good because like no matter what tooling or what you're using, or even if you're using the command line, you'll be able to always have access to this. And this sort of integrated part of the IDE is something very unique to Visual Studio. So that's super exciting.
Cool. So right now, folks can just stage right from the editor without even context switch, which is really awesome.
Yeah.
Can you like? Are there any current limitations to this experience, James? Like,
yeah.
So you mentioned or you showed us the ability to stage chunks of code. Can folks stage specific lines of code? Is that available, or is that coming, or?
That's a really great question. So right now in code review, I have actual line staging in because this is actually a chunk of code. But right now, if you download the preview, you'll only be able to stage chunks. You'll also notice you won't be able to unstage stuff, which is pretty sad, but that's also going to be here soon. And then also you'll be able to right click and stage stuff too, which you can't do right now. So there's lots of stuff coming still. What we're doing here is we're validating like the general UI and other things. So be aware there's limitations here, but hopefully by release, we'll have all that stuff solved out. So, yep.
Wow. Cool.
so cool. It kind of blows my mind when I think about the fact that just like 2-3 years ago, all we had was like Team Explorer prior to all these Git tooling integrations. And that, at least for me, was a little bit of a headache as somebody who was new to Visual Studio at the time. So it's just really nice to see what I consider these very comforting mechanics in the GitHub space just incorporated into VS, period. So is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is absolutely fantastic. And I feel like, was there like in the past, the way that you showed in the margin, you show sort of the any status, like if something was removed or added or whatever, there was some extensions in the past that people could use with Visual Studio. And so those are no longer needed. I guess it's all built in now.
Yeah. Well, so to be clear, this only applies when Git's active, right? So if you're working off of a Git repository, let's say you have a temporary file you open in Visual Studio, we'll still have an old line margin because you still want some sort of change indication. It's just you need a source of truth for what are you comparing against, right? And so depending on what extensions people have built, maybe those are still going to be useful if you're not in a Git context. But yeah, we try and cover like base scenarios for Git here. And so I'm very happy with how this worked out.
So this works in conjunction with the change tracking margin that Visual Studio have had for many, many versions. It's not the same. There's two separate concepts.
Yeah, and that old margin, that old change margin, won't be active when Git is active because we believe that this provides much more contextual information than that. Yes. And you can still get all information. For example, if I go ahead and save this file, you'll see this changes into a more bold thing, showing that that's actually committed now into the file system, which is the information the old margin was providing.
This is fantastic stuff. This is I can already see like this is going to answer so many of my questions that I usually have when I work on any project I do is all Git, and so this is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, this can be very helpful. For example, if you make a bunch of changes and you want to review your changes one by one, stage them as you go. This is very helpful. Sometimes what happens is you get very excited about your work and you overdo what you are supposed to be doing for this specific feature. And so this allows you to stage the specific parts that belongs to that work. And so, yeah, I mean, the benefits are limitless here, and it's a big bonus for productivity for sure.
I get a lot of pull requests from a bunch of the open source stuff I do, and a lot of people they want to, the pull request says something in the title like fix the typo. So you expect like a small little change, but then you realize they also refactored like 3 other code files.
Yeah.
But they couldn't like separate those things out because they kind of got excited and did multiple things. So hopefully this will get me some cleaner PRs going forward.
Yeah, and I think as you mentioned already, and well anticipated from people in the chat, I think too, single line staging is on its way. It sounds like so.
Yep. Work is in progress here, so please continue to share your feedback. And these are just 2 examples of some of the new features we introduced. There are lots of new features and enhancements, including perf. And so I would highly recommend folks to take a look at some of the links that Leslie will share, including our documentation and those blog posts and all of that. So, yeah.
There's also a question from Alex here that might be good talking about. That has to do with the change scope detection.
Right.
If there's any updates to that, often when adding a method, it gets the scope wrong and includes part of the method above or below if it's similar. Is there changes to that?
Right. So I might be addressing the wrong scope detection, but I believe what Alex is saying is if you run git diff or another algorithm like that, and I'm going to go ahead and just pull up like Git GUI because I believe it's going to be the fastest way to show this to the stream. So if you do this and there's changes, you'll see like this using task.set. So this is like the contextual what the scope is of the method change. In Visual Studio, we don't even show this, I believe, because we don't have this git change thing. And unfortunately, I don't think there's a lot Visual Studio can do to improve this directly, because this header is sort of detected algorithmically by Git itself. And actually, I think it's not even Git, it's the subpackage underneath Git, which tries to determine basically, this is supposed to be like void method. Like this would be a great scoping for that, provide context. And unfortunately, that's all algorithm driven and not in our source code. And so we haven't really touched that at all. And there's no way to like attach contextual information that Visual Studio knows, like you just modified this method to a git commit or change. And so maybe I have completely the wrong scoping thing here because there's many overloaded terms. And it looks like I did. But yeah, as far as that goes, we didn't do that. Alex says he meant the diffing in VS. In which case, let me see this here. I'm going to need more context to actually answer your question. So maybe we can get back to you unless someone else here knows exactly what you're talking about.
I think what they might be referring to is sometimes I think when you add if you're adding a new function somewhere, sometimes like the bottom, like it'll consider the function above that function you're adding, like this ending curly brace will get like that'll be deleted or added, and like you won't just see the diff as the function you added. It like overlaps with the functions above or below. But like it's still the same. I believe that would be part of the git diff algorithm. I think it's yeah, exactly like you see on line 140 on the left file.
Yeah, this is actually, well, we have our own diffing algorithm based upon like least common substrings. So this actually is something we could address, and this is really good feedback. I've actually noticed this myself too, and I just kind of like ignore it. But yeah, that's something we should probably think about more. But there's nothing planned right now for that.
Nice.
Yeah, share your feedback.
People need to watch this this show so they can give us feedback directly. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's like a really great thing. I should go talk to someone about that.
Yeah. I do have one more piece of feedback that we got about it. I wish there was a dialog box confirmation when you go to swap branches, because sometimes you can actually click on the wrong branch and then having to wait to revert back to the old branch that you were on before can be a pain.
Yeah, I can speak to that actually. We are evaluating our branch switching user experience end to end. And so we are looking into providing things like, if you have uncommitted changes and you would like to switch your branches, we're looking into providing more options to our users. For example, would you like to keep those branches on the branch you were on, or would you like to move those branches with you? We will also provide unique functionalities in terms of scanning for potential merge conflicts and letting you know about those beforehand. So that's something we are looking into, and stay posted. We'll continue to enhance that flow.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I believe, as we already mentioned, we have the NuGet features site that you should go to if you want to learn more about what's new in the Git space. And I believe there are a couple other links that you shared that I might be able to pull up in chat later. But that's sort of the gist of it, right? Or that's the summary.
Yep, we have another link specifically for line staging with up-to-date content. So that would be good for folks who are interested in line staging to go there.
Yeah, blowing up. Here it is.
Yep.
Cool. So lots of resources to check out the NuGet stuff, in which case there's a lot. It's like every update that we do, I always feel like here's 20 new awesome Git tooling features that you could be using. So yeah, y'all have a lot going on your team.
Yeah, would be very happy to come back and participate in futuristic videos like this one. So, and please keep the feedback coming. We are actively working on enhancing our Git tooling. So.
Yep. Yeah. As you probably saw here, we spend so much time working on our own products that we totally just ignore things that could be issues for other people. So yeah, definitely share whether you love or hate something or something in the middle.
Everyone's workflow is so different. So we're never going to know about all of the workflows that we need until someone says something about it.
Absolutely. All right. So thank you, Luke, James, and Taster. That was super exciting. And I'm sure we'll see y'all back in a future episode.
Thank you. Thank you.
Looking forward to it. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. And that concludes our stream for today on what's new in 17.1. So many really cool features that I'm really excited to try out once I go ahead and download. And
we only kind of looked at a few of them. There's a
yeah.
bunch of stuff. There's a bunch of small things and larger things and stuff that we didn't get around to showing you. But there's a lot. There's a lot of new things, and we know that you're going to love it.
There are a ton of new things, and I'll probably drop the link in the chat in the next 5 seconds if I didn't already. But here we go. Basically, you can go to devblogs.microsoft.com if you want to see all the latest, greatest updates in Visual Studio. Taser and David and a couple other folks have written their own specific blog posts that relate to the feature or the features that they presented in today's episode. So if you want to learn more about a specific feature, that's all there. Or if you just want the broad strokes overview, that is available too. It's a bit longer of a link, but you can find it pretty easily if you just go to devblogs.microsoft.com. So yeah, so thank you so much, Mads, for hosting with me. And thanks to the Visual Studio team in general for sharing their stuff and all the hard work that they put into all of these really cool features. Remember, folks, to share your feedback on everything that you saw here, everything that maybe you didn't see on this particular episode, because all that good and bad really helps us figure out how we can improve your development environments to be the best that they can be.
Yep. Everything Leslie said.
Awesome. Great. So until next time, happy coding.